Hey guys, so what I'm going to do is just show you a really quick way of using Excel to find the mean, variance, and standard deviation of a discrete random variable. So in your readings, you encountered a problem about Xavier's production line and that the probability distribution given to you represents the number of defective parts in 1 hour with the probability shown in this table. So just real quick, interpreting this table just means that in an hour, we can expect about 2 defective parts about 25% of the time. In an hour, we can find about 3 defective parts about 20% of the time. And when it asks you to find all these probabilities with these tables, Excel is actually really easy. Now, a lot of the functions in Excel are pretty self-explanatory. If we wanted the probability that there's less than or equal to 1 defective part, all you would do is just add up those two numbers. And there is a sum function in Excel to help you. But if you highlight these two numbers, just a quick way of seeing this, look at the bottom here. It says the average, so it computes the average of those two numbers, which we're not going to use in this chapter because we have to consider the probabilities and the x values. And it says the sum is 0.45. So the probability that there's less than or equal to 1 defective part is 0.45. We could even do it. What's the probability that there's between 1 and 3 inclusive? Well, we just highlight those. Sum is 0.75. And, there are some questions in your reading that involve verifying that something is a valid probability distribution of a discrete random variable. Well, all of our probabilities here are between 0 and 1. They can't be negative. They can't be greater than 1. And all of the probabilities combined, if you highlight it, have a sum of 1. So, one of the things in your reading you talked about was how do you calculate the mean and the variance of a discrete random variable by hand. But Excel makes it so much quicker. So just to review it, to find the mean of a discrete random variable, you take each x value and you multiply it by its respective probability and you add it up. So in other words, you're taking the sum of a product. You're summing or adding all of the products of each x value and its probability. Well, Excel is really nice in that a lot of the functions kind of emulate kind of how they sound like. So if we just type the word sum, you probably use this function already in this class. But if you go down to the fourth option, sum product, that's literally what we're going to use to calculate the mean and the variance. It's the sum of a product. Now, my Excel gives options to specify what it needs now in terms of the argument in order to make it effective. Yours may or may not, but if you're looking and watching this video, array just means a list of numbers. So what we're going to do is it's the sum of the product of the x values and their probabilities. So we're going to take an array of the x values, just highlight them, and you'll see that it automatically gets put into the function, then do a comma, and then do an array, highlight the x values, or the probability values, and close the parentheses. So what it's going to do is it's going to multiply each x and its probability, add them together, and we get 1.8. And if you recall in the reading, that is the mean, or the average number of defective parts for that hour. So then we have the mean. You can type that into Excel or whatever problem that you're working with. And now the variance. This typically tends to be the most confusing for students. And if you remember though, to compute the variance of a discrete random variable, we're taking each x value, we subtract the mean, we square it, and then we multiply that by the probability. And what we do then we do that, we sum all of that together. In Excel, I don't really want to focus on the notation of the correct notation, but what we're doing is we take each x value, we subtract the mean squared times its probability, and we add all that together. Well, once again, this is still the sum of a product, except now what's going on is we're taking the product of x minus the mean squared and the probability. But it still uses the exact same function in Excel, sum product. It's just going to require a little bit more algebra, so to speak. So, once again, we start with array 1. Now, when we computed the mean, array 1 was just our x values. But in this case, we want it to be x minus the mean squared. So, to compute the variance, you have to calculate the mean first. So let's just make sure we are correct here so Excel interprets this correctly. We want to start with the parentheses. And once again, we're going to highlight all of our x's. But if you remember the formula, it's x's minus the mean. So we highlighted our x's minus the mean. Just click it. Close it, because now what we're going to do is we're going to square that. So this part of our formula right here represents all of our x values minus the mean squared, comma. And now just highlight your probabilities. Close it, enter. And there's our variance. Now we can also, just recall in Excel, you can always adjust the number of decimal places. But right now it's just the mean is 1.8, the variance is 1.46. Now, the last thing we need to do, is just so you can see it, is compute the standard deviation. Well, from an earlier chapter, recall, the standard deviation is just the square root of the variance. So in order to calculate the standard deviation, you have to calculate the variance first. But then, just type your equal sign, just do SQRT for square root, and then just click the value of the variance. 1.208305. And recall, up here we can adjust the number of decimal places to the required number specified in the problem. Well, I hope this helps. Just recall, take it slow, especially with calculating the variance. Make sure you do the parentheses so that you don't mess up and get a wrong answer.